Given that this is the first entry in a new series, the intro might be a bit long, so if you'd like to get right into the matches, head to the timestamp down in the description. Additionally, with 30 plus years of hindsight, not everything has aged well, and there might be some less than virtuous people being discussed throughout the series. Each match will be listed in the description in case I do go over some controversial figures, and any praise will be towards the material itself and not an endorsement of anyone's character. Thanks for watching, and I hope you enjoy the new series. This was originally going to be a side project running parallel to the series, diving into current matches that I enjoy throughout the course of a calendar year. With the circumstances I've discussed in other videos, the side project is now the main fixture, as I'm in no place to cover current things in a timely fashion. It ended up working out though, as I already had gathered the footage and just needed to watch it, and I'm also of the firm belief that to truly appreciate everything that pro wrestling has to offer, it's crucial to go back and explore the past. ECW is by no means some stone left unturned. I'm far from the first or last to dive into it, but this channel is all about sharing my own experiences, and like many, ECW was a gateway promotion for me. One Night Stand was the first pay-per-view my parents bought for my brother and I, which explains a lot in hindsight, and I watched the compilation DVDs ad nauseum growing up. However, some conversations with friends as an adult made me realize just how little I've actually seen in its entirety, and I like to see the full picture. The result is a complete and accurate watch, to the best of my abilities at least. I can't claim 100% accuracy, as while I have everything that made tape, you never truly know at fan cams, but I will do my very best. As with any of my videos, I do have some guidelines to go over. Matches will be discussed in chronological order and by air date, and selections are based on my personal enjoyment. No rankings, match ratings, etc. Early television will still be referred to as hardcore TV, as even 1993 episodes are filed under that, despite not claiming that name for over a year. And as blasphemous as it sounds, I will be attributing a lot of screenshots to WWE copyright, as they currently own the footage. At the end of the day, I have to cover my ass here. Before getting into the thick of it, it is worth mentioning the bit of footage that we do have from the year prior. There were 3 VHS tapes recovered from the vault, 2 compilations, and the unaired pilot episode for Sports Channel Philadelphia. Unfortunately, I can't recommend going out of your way for these. They're a historical curiosity more than anything. If you absolutely had to, the chain match between Ivan Koloff and Tommy Cairo is probably the most exciting of the bunch. While 1993 for the most part isn't great, you can see the promotion beginning to find itself. Some usual suspects will be at the forefront, giving at least a handful of matches that I think are worth your time between perceived quality or importance and context to the promotion's development. With all that being said, after watching 153 matches between television and fan cam, these are my favorite matches from Eastern Championship Wrestling in 1993. We kick off with a match that acts as a more effective pilot than the actual unaired pilot episode itself. ECW would anchor its early television around Terry Funk and Eddie Gilbert, who have wrestled multiple times in the tri-state area by this point. Before they took it to Sports Channel, they main evented the Battle of the Belts show in January, and thanks to some fan cam footage, this I Quit match is floating around in its entirety. Truth be told, this might be my favorite match of this first definitive year. It's a crash course in what these two and their feud is all about. There's a palpable tension in the air as Donna Summer's hot stuff echoes throughout this hotel. Funk has to be restrained by the referee as Gilbert makes his entrance, and once all seconds are gone from ringside, the fists start to fly. It doesn't take very long for Funk to get his point across. He begins to hand Gilbert the ass-kicking of a lifetime, and thanks to the proximity of this fan cam, you can hear every strike and all the trash talking that comes with them. I think in general that tangible feedback really emphasizes all the violence here, or as we'll see later, isn't something they could fully recapture in the promotion's early venture into TV. This opening proves the reputations of both men to be true. Funk brings some of the best punches you'll ever see, while Gilbert stooges and stalls at any given opportunity. When they do trade momentum, you get Funk's signature seesaw spot early, which is a nice bonus. Gilbert takes full advantage of the stipulation by being the first to introduce foreign objects, allowing him to take control for the first time. With that control comes bloodshed, and obviously with Funk, it's a sick cut. In Reprieve, he then wanders into the corner of the room to find a luggage dolly, but unfortunately they never get to really use it. Once Gilbert resumes his heat segment, you feel the room light up at the first glimpse of a Terry Funk comeback, though the beatdown continues. I love Funk's approach to a lot of his selling here. Take for instance when his head is driven into the timekeeper's table. There's no rebound or give, just dead weight being dropped on the point of contact. By this point, every blow feels like Terry Funk is at the brink of death until a well-timed punch on the outside. It's far from the heroic babyface comeback. Instead, Funk brings out an absolutely feral and malicious assault on his enemy, spilling his blood in return. On top of the sickening violence, insult is added to injury between jaw-jacking and straight-up incoherent rambling when the microphone is introduced. He called himself middle-aged and crazy for a reason, and I don't think you could consider him anything else after the scenes on display here. With the walls closing in, Gilbert has one last trick up his sleeve, or rather his boot, and throws a fireball into Terry's face, only driving Funk's demeanor into more incoherence and desperation. This plays right into the finish as Funk uses the wooden ring steps to destroy Gilbert's knee, and he has no choice but to quit. The usage of the ring steps is consistent with most of the plunder in this match. Gilbert is the first to use it, but ultimately faces his comeuppance later down the line. Simple and effective stuff dealt in an uncompromising way. It really feels like a mission statement for what the promotion would gradually turn into, even if Gilbert was unfortunately not long for it. I really love this match though. The brawling and plunder rule, and the camera being so close to the action greatly benefits all the madness unfolding. You can feel the hatred simmering in the air, and it really made me excited to see their feud develop once weekly TV got off the ground. While I don't know the nature of this footage, you can find the whole show floating around pretty easily. Outside of the main event, the rest is full of average matches with a few curiosities, such as one of the last Kerry Von Erich matches to make tape before his untimely passing. Regardless, I cannot recommend the main events enough. The peak of ECW's first major feud saw Eddie Gilbert and Terry Funk headline their first major show at the new ECW arena in a Texas chain match. The seeds were planted from the very first segment of television, as Funk was brought in as a special guest only for tensions to boil over in the weeks to come. Before the promotion found a home base, Hot Stuff International would form an unholy union with the New Dangerous Alliance, led by namesake and close friend of Eddie Gilbert, Paulie Dangerously. Stick a pin in this for now. To Funk and Gilbert's credit, the majority of this build to the match was handled separately from each other, with Funk contributing pre-tapes while he was dealing with the small matter of a canonical entry in deathmatch wrestling history with Atsushi Onita and FMW. On the 19th of June, there would be no escape from each other, as the only thing separating these two would be 12 feet of steel chain. It was time to settle once and for all who is the King of Philadelphia. Similarly to their last meeting, Gilbert stalls as long as he possibly can before exchanging pleasantries, though this time functions to put over the danger of the stipulation. A great deal of the match stresses positioning. With it being contested under 4 corner rules, you can see Funk hanging on for dear life at Gilbert's first circuit of the turnbuckles. On the flip side, Hot Stuff often goes to the outside to create some sort of separation in order to weasel in and out of more underhanded offense. Funk makes early use of the chain, with Heyman complementing this nicely, screaming in terror with every lash. In contrast to their match in January, the action has a slower, heavier cadence to it. Funk in particular has to scratch and claw for everything, and often those drawn-out instances pay off with things like the hanging choke over his shoulder. I think that aspect of physical exertion is fitting of the stipulation. All of the stumbling and attempts at leverage make each ring post feel miles away. Gilbert still insists on going to the outside, which is where he can employ all of his nastiness, be it using the timekeeper's table to draw first blood, or going below the belt with the chain. All of these shortcuts are there, but obviously he can't win the match in the space he's most comfortable. Naturally, Funk gets a hold of things once back in the ring, returning the favor by busting open Gilbert with some chain-assisted punches. That dependence on leaving the ring rears its head as another attempt finds Gilbert being dog-walked around the arena and having to pay for his sins. Just like the I Quit match, Gilbert's strategies are turned against him for comeuppance, as good things come to those who wait. When you compare and contrast to the I Quit match, you don't get nearly as close to the violence, but I do think that the hard cam did an adequate job of keeping up with the chaos. Like I said earlier though, it does lack that overwhelming feedback, but by no means hurts the match. After Funk drags Gilbert back into the ring, the end is all but certain until the match erupts into one final slugfest. By this point, Funk is only focused on harming Gilbert, which brings the ref into the picture. Encouraging Funk to just end the match gets himself in harm's way, causing some confusion as a replacement is needed. Funk has Gilbert where he wants him though, at his mercy like a deer in the headlights, though despite all the chaos that has ensued, a certain someone has been uninvolved for the last 15 minutes or so, and with the match all but won, Paul Lee finally gets his hands dirty. A well-timed distraction gives Funk the visual triumph with the ref's back turned, and in the commotion of the missed finish, a chair gets involved. You can guess how that turned out. Heyman and Gilbert steal the match, beginning the reign of the King of Philadelphia. The finish sure is messy, but this wasn't supposed to be the end of the feud. Unfortunately, Eddie Gilbert would leave the company days before their Lights Out tag team match in September, which gets even more muddy with his appearance on the show and the nature of his exit, but in a vacuum, this is still very strong. Eddie Gilbert stealing the crown not only gave us the better parts of television while he was still around, but framed Terry Funk as the hero of the people that required no gimmick. I think I much prefer the I Quit match, but I don't think you could go wrong when it comes to these two. It's a shame we never got a more conclusive blow-off to what was ECW's main program of 1993. This is more of a spot showcase than anything, but I do think it's worth mentioning. It's by far and away the wildest stunt pulled in the footage we have up to this point. With the promotion now in a permanent home within the ECW arena, it didn't take very long for the wrestlers to make the most out of the furniture, which brings us to JT Smith. Smith was a fixture of the mid-card in the promotion's early days, and in this match showed his willingness to double down on some of the scarier bumps at the time. He faces the mysterious Dark Patriot, a masked wrestler portrayed by Hot Stuff's brother, Doug Gilbert. The first half of the match is fine. Smith puts his athleticism on display before Dark Patriot throws himself into the referee, and things take an unexpected turn. With the ref out of the equation, a brawl breaks out, taking things all the way up the entranceway until Dark Patriot opens and closes a door behind them. Before you know it, they appear in the Eagle's Nest, and there's really only one way to go from there. Following some jostling, Smith is thrown all the way to the floor, only to be outdone by Patriot diving off soon after. There's only a hard cam shot of this, so I'm not sure how or if this was protected in any way, but it looks awesome. We've gotten our fair share of bloodshed and chaotic brawls up to this point, but this was the first truly batshit stunt pulled, appropriately christening the place that would house them for the better part of the promotion's history. Eddie Gilbert would drag his brother back to the ring to steal the countout victory as Hot Stuff International tightened their grip on the promotion. These two would have a return match with a scaffold stipulation, and while there's still some cool stuff there, I think the shock of this first crazy dive overtakes it for me. Smith takes the big bump again in that match too, which then is sold as an injury for the rest of the year, so credit to him for doubling down on these scary falls. JT Smith was not only part of one of the signature stunts of early TV, but also in one of the better worked matches from a mat-oriented perspective. The late summer saw the first of many collaborations with other promotions, as Japanese outfit Wing sent over select talent for a few tapings. One of these featured their junior heavyweight champion Mr. Motegi, who's attributed as an innovator of the rolling German suplex. I'm sure if you put this up against other 1990s junior heavyweight matches, it'll look unremarkable, but in the context of 93 ECW, it really stands out. There's a snappiness in the opening exchanges that already give this a different flavor, and that's before they take to the canvas. Both men attempt to take hold of a limb and go to work, but Smith enters the match still nursing the injury from the big dive, giving Motegi a clear target. They don't necessarily get to partake in a riff session, but even their feeling out process features some of the more crisp grappling you'll find in these early days. Once Motegi recognizes his opponent's weakness, he can hone in on the injury. As things progress towards the 10-minute time limit, it becomes a matter of survival for Smith. After withstanding an arsenal of holds, he has an opening to flip the match on its head, but the damage sustained to his knee prevents him from bridging into an armbar. Motegi is able to escape, and upon hitting one of his signature Germans, time limit expires. While not a blow-away match, it's a breath of fresh air after watching over 20 episodes of TV. I think this could be seen as a forerunner to the meshing of different styles that would be prominent in the promotion for years to come. For the more violent side of the coin when it comes to the Wing collaboration, I'd recommend the baseball bat match pitting the Headhunters against Crash the Terminator and Miguel Perez Jr. Fun fact, that ended up main eventing over the Lights Out tag after Eddie Gilbert pulled out. There are first impressions in wrestling, and then there's this. After weeks of hyping up Sabu as one of the most dangerous individuals walking the earth, he's finally arrived at the ECW arena, meeting someone who'd become a career rival in the Tazmaniac. This was a 1-2 punch of an angle before the match takes place, but both get the point across as loud and as vibrant as possible. This angle was presented as some sort of dispute with Hunter Q. Robbins III, but once Sabu is let out of his restraints, nothing else matters. Only him and whoever dares to step into his orbit. He makes his presence known by assaulting Taz, and subsequently overshooting the hell out of an Asai moonsault, crashing into the ringside seats. It appears they actually run the match later in the taping, but what's important is that this rabid Philadelphia audience got a taste of the danger that follows Sabu. Cut back to the match itself, Sabu comes off as something from another planet. Before Taz makes his entrance, the man begins launching chairs in all directions and attempts to rush his opponent at the curtain, but the Tazmaniac comes prepared and jumpstarts the match with a chair. I couldn't think of a better way to open this pairing series in the promotion. With the chaotic nature of the two, Sabu grabs a table on his way back to the ring, and between the wreckage and the trailing crowd around them, feels like a tornado is rolling through the arena. As imperative as it was to establish Sabu here, the Tazmaniac asserts himself by cutting off his opponent by dropping him on his head. One of the many disgusting cutoffs to keep him in this thing. The stark physicality and fearlessness to match Sabu with plunder proves he is more than a worthy opponent. Unfortunately for them, the binding of the table was broken before using it, blowing the big spot, but in a way it's appropriate for how much of this match is driven by Helter Skelter. And Taz makes the most out of the situation by instinctually suplexing Sabu into the wreckage anyways. At the end of the day, these are two crazy individuals with the objective of hurting each other, so I think the looseness benefits things. This segment and match is my favorite chunk of TV from this first year. It's an absolute triumph, and I don't think my summary can do the unfiltered energy of this thing justice. Their rematch in November is more substantial as a wrestling match, and certainly worth going out of your way for too, but that opening statement might be my favorite thing I've watched for the whole project yet. You watch 26 episodes of 1993 ECW, and when something like this explodes onto your screen, it's hard to just not get caught up in the frenzy. It's no wonder why this pairing would be a reference point in the company's history. By the end of the year, Sabu would be heavyweight champion, and consequently cost Terry Funk his television title at November to Remember. This obviously did not sit well with the wily veteran, unleashing a more rabid side of him en route to their singles match at the end of the year. You see these names on paper, and you'd assume you're in for a wild ride, and lo and behold, they delivered. There is a slight caveat with this one, as the version of the match that aired was unfortunately clipped. Thankfully, it isn't joined in progress, and the finish is intact, but somewhere in the middle they decided to get heavy with the cuts. It's almost like the plus 30 version of the match, where after each big spot they transition to the next. You never like matches being incomplete, but with someone like Funk, he's always adding something in those in-between moments, be it the stumbling, convulsing, or swinging at anyone in his vicinity, so I really would have liked to see how he utilized that space, but it is what it is, and what we have is still very good. Sabu opens another match with an attempted chop block, which is not something I'm used to seeing, but as you'd expect, all hell breaks loose. Funk is evasive to open things, though is so fed up with Paul Lee's antics at this point that he gets distracted and starts swinging at him, giving the champion the advantage. Once in the ring, it's just as advertised. You're dropping Terry Funk into the Sabu match, and it rules. It's a chaotic sprint up until that first cut, filled with huge offense and just enough plunder. Though when Funk goes after Heyman again, the first big edit hits. I'm not going to list off every one, but this one feels a bit more significant place to cut. Funk is then seen tied up in the middle of the ring, and I really would have liked to see the context, but it's a way to get Sabu into definitive control. While doing so, he begins to target Funk's lower back, though it's not something fully explored, but I guess dumping Funk onto the concrete a bunch would suffice. Out of one of the transitional cuts is one of the first instances of Sabu using a chair to assist his aerial offense, which Funk takes advantage of after taking a splash, stumbling right into it and tipping over, because of course he does. I'm glad that made it into the final cut. It gives way to an interrupted chunk of footage where you have one of the more insane upswells in energy from Sabu to this point, and that's saying something. In response to the ref's disapproval with a table being involved, Sabu sends him flying, fights off both Rotten brothers, and tops it off with a moonsault into the crowd, and this all happens before Funk even goes through the table. Speaking of, there's a real nice bit of magic with that table spot. Funk is able to go over the ropes and through the table in one fluid motion, and it looks incredible. I wouldn't outrule it being a happy accident. Unfortunately, this is where things start to go off of the rails. With Funk in position to win, Paulie begins a parade of interference, which checks out. It's not the first and certainly won't be the last match he books in this manner, though I'm not sure if this was the right place to do it. Funk has embraced a more cruel side of himself, but he isn't any less likable, whereas Sabu is presented as a sadistic monster that you can't help but be drawn to. While normally I wouldn't mind that kind of ambiguity, I do think it muddies the finish, especially with it being Funk's first world title win in the promotion. Being aided by Shane Douglas isn't exactly the heroic moment you'd want, but so much of this rules and is still worth your time in my opinion. It's Funk and Sabu in a violent sprint, so even with the clipping and overbooking, you know what you're getting yourself into. Normally, I dedicate honorable mentions to a handful of matches, but for the sake of this video, here's some promos, segments, and tidbits that I got a kick out of. Starting with Terry Funk cutting a promo on Eddie Gilbert, with the stand-in for Gilbert being a horse's ass. Eddie Gilbert working 2 tag team matches in one night, damn near by himself, as a certain Superfly couldn't be bothered. The Sal Balomo promo on Sylvester Stallone for no apparent reason. The Wing highlight tape, which aired ahead of their talent appearing, which immediately piqued my interest to check it out for myself. The King of Philadelphia vignettes. It was always fun to see what Eddie Gilbert would get himself into next, especially during the stretch of TV where they didn't have very much new tape to work with. And last but not least, a pair of Terry Funk promos from later in the year. The first being from the October 5th TV, his heartfelt speech after winning the television championship, and on the flip side, his scathing promo after losing the belt, which was an enraged statement of fearlessness ahead of his first singles meeting with Sabu. And that is it from me. If you got this far into the video, thank you so much for your time and for hearing what I had to say. I hope you enjoyed this first foray into the past as much as I enjoyed making it. I don't really have an idea as far as frequency of uploads, as 1993 was a much lighter watch list than the rest, and as I'm writing this, my hard drive with all my resources for this project bricked, so I do have to do some housekeeping before diving back in. Regardless, you can find me on socials at OuterStevan. I'll talk to you again next time when ECW embraces a new identity in 1994.